Very big news on the lab leak front. So the House Republican Committee has released some new emails that they reviewed from the National Institute of Health of discussions of the lab leak hypothesis between Dr. Fauci and the head of the NIH and many other prominent scientists. Let's put that up there on the screen. These emails are vital because what they show is that there was an institutional effort to push back and stop any discussion of the lab leak hypothesis within the National Institute of Health. Specifically, Bob Gary, he was shown in the emails and was spoken to by NIH leaders who advised him, quote, not to mention a lab origin as that will just add fuel to the conspiracists. So within that, it is very clear here that Dr. Fauci, that Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, and others were shown in summaries of calls and emails with leaders who were experts in the field of virology, specifically told them to shut down discussions of a lab leak hypothesis in February of 2020. And I think this is very important because here's the thing. February 1, 2020. Try to remember that time. There was no discussion around coronavirus. I looked it up, actually. I was freaking out a little bit around then. I got a call from a friend of mine late January who said, this is a big deal in China. I'm looking at the data. This is a disaster for old people. We are going to have a massive lockdown in America. The first segment that we did on it was right after Valentine's Day, late February on Rising.
Wow.
I actually went back and found it. So, but that's, again, it just shows you that February 1st, 2020 was a very, very early time. And immediately at that time, they were saying, do not mention any lab origin hypothesis as it will fuel conspiracy theorists. This is not afterwards. This is during the initial outbreak and showing you that from the very beginning, they were deeply concerned about the idea of a lab leak, so much so that they were willing to shut down discussions of it. And the emails themselves show that at such an early time of shutting down the discussion on this, Crystal, that they knew the political explosiveness and the backlash that they would face when the truth came to light. 2 years later, it's clear as day, at least, if not the origin itself, although I think there's overwhelming evidence pointing to the lab leak, that within the cover-up from the very beginning, they did everything they could in order to make it go away.
I mean, so the cover-up in certain ways is worse than the crime because, look, no one is saying here that the Chinese intentionally or that Fauci intentionally manufactured a pandemic around the world.
Exactly.
Lab leaks happen all the time.
Yes,
it is not,
as we learned throughout the course of this pandemic.
It is not that unusual. And to say, okay, this is devastating, and this is why this is so important when we come back to it, it's...
This is the Debate Me channel, and let's examine this from the tribal brain that is very prominent in the United States of America. So if you are in the anti-Fauci clan, now to be clear, I do not like Fauci at all. I think he should be removed from his position. I think he should face accountability for lives that have been lost as a result of him being a politician over being a scientist. But I'm not in the anti-Fauci clan. Right? I don't do clans. My assessment of him is based on the evidence, and I'm not just looking at evidence that supports what I want to believe to be true. But if you are in the anti-Fauci clan, then you will have a low bar of evidence in terms of I can tell you things negative about Fauci. I can come up with conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, and you will accept them with minimal to no evidence at all because you just don't like Dr. Fauci, right? So if I'm in that clan, I will look at this as, aha, see, Fauci, he was doing something evil with this virus, and he was trying to cover it up from the very beginning. Okay, that is certainly feasible. He certainly seems shady enough that I would not be surprised if that's the case, but I don't really have evidence to support that particular conclusion. And I can easily come up with other conclusions which might explain why he was trying to shut things down. For example, seeing how things have been so tribal and everything's left, right, and they made this whole thing become so political, the masks and the pandemic. One could extrapolate that something like a lab leak sort of theory that, we don't know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Like, we don't know. If we knew, that's different, right? But we don't even know if this is actually true. But I think it's an easy extrapolation that there would be a part of the population that would latch onto it, and this would be like a lightning rod type of situation, as it was, right? As it was. If that was your extrapolation, you were correct. That is exactly what happened. But that would not take any genius to expect that. That being the case, I could see a logical argument made that the reason he was trying to suppress it is because just he knew this is what was going to happen. I don't believe that to be the case, but the objective approach is to point that out, which is why I'm pointing it out. Even though I don't like him, I hold him accountable for a lot of really bad things. I think there should be potential criminal investigations into him for sure. I think people like Rand Paul are potentially going to keep him from ever being held accountable. People like Project Veritas. It's just so amazing to me how this country, it's like we're in this sort of bizarro universe where up is down, right is left. Because the very people who are most protecting Dr. Fauci are looked upon as heroes about, in a community of people who, like myself, see how shady Fauci is and just not understanding the full picture of what's going on. They are getting sucked up into, bullshit from Project Veritas and Rand Paul. Now, when I say bullshit, I don't mean what they're saying is bullshit. I mean, these are bullshitters, right? Rand Paul raising money and Project Veritas working for the very same elites who perhaps benefited from some of this research that looks like the NIH might have been doing, and that's the whole subject of this discussion, right? So there are people supporting and praising people who are directly connected to the very thing that they are calling out, and that is the United States of America, right? Anyway, the critical thing I think that is relevant here is, even if I grant an easy extrapolation that, hey, this coming out is going to be latched onto by a certain group of people, we already had major division going on in this country in general. This is pre-pandemic, I got to remember. I even have to stop myself. This is pre-pandemic, so we're not into this whole masks and all that kind of stuff. None of that stuff has happened. And in case you guys missed that, let me remind you, because I just forgot that myself. This is pre-pandemic. So the tribalism at that point is just, left versus right. Trump has to go, impeachment. We got to impeach this guy. Oh, the impeachment's a fraud. That's what's going on, right? Trump not taking the pandemic seriously. That's the context. So I think it's potentially unusually skeptical of a government official to be preemptively so concerned about this being a lightning rod conversation. I mean, we see how ineffective our government can be, right? There's things that you would think very obvious that they would address. They would do something about. They would expect certain problems to happen and preemptively do something about, and yet they don't. And then we suffer consequences, and they do it again and again, and they never seem to learn. So that kind of an incompetent, broken government, for them to be so sharp in this one thing that, this is definitely going to be a big deal and da-da-da-da-da. Pandemic hasn't even started. Mask wars hasn't even started. None of this has started. And they were so sharp to say, let's silence this. I'm sorry, it doesn't go with the normal way that they operate. The normal way that they operate would be behind the curve. They would not be thinking ahead like this. They would allow this thing to get out of control. And then after the fact, try to slow it down or anything like that. But to be so far ahead of the curve, to be like shutting down like that, I think is a major red flag. I think is very, very suspicious. I think that is the thing. I think a rational thing is to, without knowing the full story, is to take serious mental note of the timing of this preemptive censoring of the lab leak discussion. Consider all that's happened after, right? People's channels getting deleted, Facebook accounts getting deleted. And consider that from the very beginning, the genesis of all of this, before we even knew what was coming, that they were already on top of this thing. Again, you're in the anti-Fauci camp. I don't even need to present that to you. You already went there and even further. For those people in that camp, I warn you, this is speculation. And it is possible on this one situation that they actually, were ahead of things. But dubious, bit dubious. Pretty dubious. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell, be well. Shout out to Breaking Points, Crystal and Sagar. Keep doing the great work. And when am I going to get my invitation to be on the show? That's what inquiring minds want to know. That rhymes.